All right, so I am away today. So I wanted to quickly touch base with you though, because you have a work period and you're going to be working on research as well as your essential question. So I wanted to go over, we've done skills lessons before, but I wanted to do a quick new skills lesson just specifically focusing on research and your heritage fair. So you are looking at your essential question. Some of you are still here. You're at the brainstorming phase. You're not entirely sure. It's due today, but do not panic. That's okay. It's okay. Coming up with an essential question can be overwhelming, especially because it's rare that you're actually given the opportunity to think about what you yourself want to study. So take your time with it. Do submit a question today. Even if you don't love it, do submit a question today so that you and I can discuss it and I can give you some feedback and we can work together to really help you create a really strong and effective Heritage Fair project. In this presentation that I've uploaded to Google Classroom as a PowerPoint as well as this video, I've included a hyperlink again just of that handout about some tools and tricks for creating essential questions. Once you have your question, what I would suggest you do is check it over. So the first one, and there's a reason this is number one, I really want you to ask yourself, is this the question that you're actually interested in? Are you interested in your essential question? If you're not interested in this project, it's going to be really painful for you. It's going to be like a lot of work. You're not going to be that excited. So make sure that you're selecting a topic that you think you are genuinely going to enjoy. Next, is it truly an inquiry question? So by this, I mean, can it be answered with a yes or a no? If it can be, that's not an inquiry question. Are you implying the answer in your question? Right? So are you kind of answering your question in your question? So make sure that you've created an open-ended investigative question. So for example, a student came up to me and they said, what if I do, does racism exist in Canada? Well, that there's a lot you could do with that topic, but the actual question, does racism exist in Canada? Unfortunately, we know for a fact that it does, right? Racism does exist in Canada. So it's not actually an inquiry question. However, going back to what the student is interested in, if they're interested in racism, there's a lot we could do with that to make that an inquiry question. So just something to keep in mind. Next, ask yourself, is it related to history? And also keep in mind that history is not just World War I or World War II or the 20s and 30s or the Great Depression, right? So your project may, like for example, our students last year who looked at LGBTQ rights, a lot of their information began in the 60s and 70s because that's when there was more documentation in Canada and then went up to 2017. So they didn't span like the entire course of history, right? So if your topic is more current, that's fine as well. And we can help you, we can guide you in terms of how you're going to make that a historical topic. But do make sure that there's some ability to research and connect it to history and Canada as well. Also ask your question, is it too general or too specific? So sometimes, for example, when I'm reading grade 12 history essays, a student will write, in the entire world, this has never happened before, right? Or this is the best idea in the entire world, or something like that. Although that can be quite compelling, remember, like it's very broad. Are you actually going to tell me about everything that happened in the entire world, right? That's another thing to think about if you're looking at racism or if you're looking at discrimination. Are you going to tell me about every single group, or are you going to focus on a specific group? Last year, what made that LGBTQ spoken word so effective was they had a really specific target that they were very passionate about and they spoke very well on, right? So make sure it's not too specific and not too general as well. Once you're done your essential question, it's time to party. So you can dance right here. If I was in classroom, I would dance for you, right? You're partying, you're happy, and you're on to the next stage. I know now you're super excited. Research, woo woo. So I actually love research. I am a freak. I'm well aware of this. I think research is really exciting because for me, a lot of times I have ideas in my head and then I go to research and I find out all this new information that maybe causes me to challenge my worldview or opens my eyes to things I didn't know about. The other thing that may happen when you research is you may look at your essential question that you're partying about here and say, hey, wait a minute, I found this new piece of research and that's the path I want to go on. That's okay, right? Remembering that this is an inquiry-based project, I do want you to check in with me if you choose to change your question. I just want to have a conversation with you about that. So Whether you love research or not, that is the next stage of your project. So just a quick recap. I'm not going to go over this in too much detail because I've already talked to you about this in class, but just reminders to why we do it. So what we want to make sure to avoid is we want to make sure that you avoid plagiarism and that you learn how to reference your work properly. So I've already told you about this, but just a quick reminder, right? There's deliberate plagiarism and there's accidental plagiarism. You want to avoid both of them. Right? So we've gone over this already, but just make sure you're avoiding both deliberate plagiarism and accidental plagiarism. Okay, so how do you avoid plagiarism? So one, and this is what we're going to be talking about, is you're going to keep track of all of your information. So you're going to keep track of sources as you go along. Two, be familiar with the manual of style, the citations that you're using. And for this class, I'm asking you to use the Chicago format. Three, when in doubt, cite. You can never oversight, but you can undercite, and that's when you can get into a lot of trouble. So cite exact words, use quotations. Summaries, make sure you insert a footnote. Paraphrasing is when you put something into your own words, insert a footnote. And always proofread or peer editing. That would be more for your final project than for your research notes, but basically cite. Okay, and another great tool, this is more for if you submit an essay or a paper. Turnitin actually allows you to just create your own student account and you can submit it to Turnitin and it can tell you if they have any concerns with your essay. So again, I'm going to go through this really quickly because we've already done this in class, but just refer to the PowerPoint on how to footnote books, right? How also to footnote websites, right? And then please also refer to the rules on this page, right? On what to do for your first footnote and what to do for your remaining footnotes. So, and then there's this great video here for you to reference. Here as well, I've included my bibliography that I did for this. So that way, if you have any questions, you can actually check out my sources, right? They're all hyperlinked for you here. So you can actually check out the sources that I've used on this. Next, I want to talk to you about the next stage of your project, so research notes and bibliography. So your research notes and your bibliography are not due for a while, right? I think it's November 8th or November 9th, so you have some time and you have 2 full class periods to do research in class, and you'll also be working on it independently at home. So going over here, what do your research notes, what are they supposed to look like? And I'm going to talk to you about 2 examples. So just a quick overview. In total, you're going to be handing in 3 to 4 pages of research notes and a bibliography cited properly in Chicago format. So this is one way you could do it. So you see here, you have the whole citation and then you have the notes. Notice here, and you'll see this in the 2 student examples that I show you, most of the research notes are in quotation marks, right? And what they've done is they've kept track of the paragraph number, but most of the research notes are in quotation marks because with research, oftentimes you're just directly copying the information. However, if you put the information into your own words, you still need to cite it. Okay, so I've given you here a template of an idea of a table that you could use. So you would have your source cited properly in Chicago format, your notes here, page and or paragraph number. If it's a website, you might want to just include the URL, which I'll show you for the student examples. And then here is a tool that you can do, which are thoughts, key points, summaries, like ideas that stuck out to you from your research notes. You don't have to do this, but it can be really helpful for you. And this is just the rubric that we're looking at in terms of how you're being graded on your research notes. So just take a minute to go through this afterwards. All right, next, what I want to talk to you about, going back to this, is I just want to show you a couple student examples. So this example here, okay, the other thing I want to note is both of these students from last year did more than what was required. So you're only required to do 3 to 4 pages. I will only be looking at 3 to 4 pages. As far as I know, Mr. Title will only be looking at 3 to 4 pages, but you can check with him if you're working with a partner in his class. However, if you feel that you need more research than that, that's absolutely fine. You're not going to lose marks for doing more. So this student, as you can see, they put their full citation cited properly in Chicago format at the top, and then they took their notes here. It's in quotation marks if they directly copied it, and then they had the URL link. Because with Chicago format, you don't really need to keep track of the paragraphs as much. That's more an MLA format thing. So, and they continue, and then when it's a new source, They have a new Chicago citation. I apologize, I was going to say footnote, but they have a full Chicago citation, and then they continue on with their notes. Another student did a similar thing as well. Just waiting for it to load. All right, here they put their question at the top. They also gave me a couple notes, which were helpful. And I don't know if you noticed this. This I thought was very interesting. So they did a note number 2, and they said if 2 notes are highlighted the same color, there's a link between the 2, more for personal use. The other thing this student did is anytime they had a new source, they actually bolded the source, put a photo beside it to help them. They said it was easier for them to find all of their different sources when they went to create their project. So this is a really excellent template for you to look at as well. And they color-coded links that went together in guiding your research notes. Again, this student did about 8 pages, right? And then you can see their bibliography at the bottom. You are not required to do 8 pages, right? But these are all the research notes put together here. So those are 2 exemplars to get you started. Next up are sources. So I've given you a link here to some sources from last year's Heritage Fair projects. So there's a number of sources that students found or whatever. Some will be applicable to your topic and some won't. I just also wanted to take you briefly again to our class website, and I wanted to remind you where to find some sources. So right here, there's a link, right, that says Canadian History Resources. There's a ton of resources here to get you started. There is online journals and newspapers, which is a link right here that you can also use. And then in World War II specifically, if your topic has anything to do with World War II, I've also added in some World War II resources. On top of that, the school library has a few online journals that you can use. So you can use EBSCOhost and Gale. So both of these are accessible to you at school without any user ID or password. If you want to use EBSCOhost, you have to sign in a user ID SLSS and password student at home. And if you want to use Gale at home, you just have to use the password York. You can also use Google Scholar. It's a great tool, and I absolutely think you should use Wikipedia. Students are often shocked by this when I say this, but I have a friend who's a pediatrician, and she tells me that she uses Wikipedia for her medical journals. The other thing that I think is amazing about Wikipedia is all of the sources that are hyperlinked for you at the bottom. It's one of the most vetted encyclopedias on the internet. So you can go to those sources to help you out with this assignment. Once again, remember that you are in the preliminary phase of this assignment. I know I'm not here to help you today, so you're taking your time. Don't panic. I think what's important to remember is really this is a 5 to 7 minute presentation in the end that you're creating in any format that you want. But what's nerve-wracking to most people is that you actually have choice, right? You have choice over your question. You have choice over the format of your presentation. So try not to let that scare you and try to view that as an opportunity. And I'm really excited by the questions and the ideas that you've brought to me so far. And I'm looking forward to working with you when I get back. So are you laughing at me trying to figure out how to close it again? I'm laughing at myself trying to figure out how to close it again. All right, so thank you so much. Have a great day and good luck with your research or finishing up your essential question. Thanks. Please work.